I have been staring at my computer screen for the past 10 minutes because I've been trying to figure out a way to start this video, and I am struggling to think of one. I'm struggling to think of a good structure, so I'm kind of just gonna wing it. Sceptres lose 2-0 to the New York Sirens at home in their first shutout loss of the season, and this is very telling. But I'm going to do the little summary first. First period, no scoring, no penalties, pretty back and forth, pretty even period. It was a good watch. Second period, about 3 minutes in, Christina Kaltenkova manages to get a goal on Elaine Chuli after New York rushed in. Chuli stopped a really good breakaway shot. The puck got kicked back out to Kaltenkova, standing around the circle, and she knuckled it underneath of Chuli's blocker. 1-0. Okay, almost exactly a minute later, Ella Shelton lays on the puck in the crease because New York had yet another very good chance, and guess what? That's a penalty shot because covering the puck in the crease if you're not the goalie is illegal. And Kaltenkova takes that shot as well and rings it off the post. Toronto had one power play opportunity in the second period, and guess what? Toronto's power play still sucks and is still last in the league, so nothing came of that. Third period comes in at the exactly 10-minute mark. Jamie Bourbonnais got a holding penalty on Clara Van Wieren, and Clara Van Wieren decided, well, if you're going to hold my stick, I'm going to cross-check you with it until you let go, and so she did, and she got a penalty for roughing. 4-on-4, nothing comes of that. Toronto, desperate, down 1-0, yanks their goalie. Still can't get anything happening. Kaltenkova buries the empty netter with 7 seconds left in the game, and New York wins 2-0. Okay, you know how the game went now. First 10 minutes of this game, Toronto looked great. Toronto, their offense looked solid. Their defense looked solid. They were hounding New York. Okay, and worth noting, going into this game, Toronto was on a 4-game losing streak. New York is on a 3-game winning streak, if I'm not mistaken, and they are tied in the standings. Toronto is on New York. They are hounding them. They are getting in every passing lane. They are blocking all the shots. They are not letting anything by, and they're maintaining offensive zone pressure for the first 10 or so minutes of the game, maybe 12, maybe 15. And then guess what happened? Guess what happened? TV timeout. The ice crew comes out, they shovel off the snow. You know the drill. And once that happened, or in and around there, we saw the same holes that we've been seeing in Toronto's defensive zone. And I only really picked up on it this game, their offensive zone. They've been able to keep a lot of pressure in their offensive zone. They've been able to keep a lot of zone time. But as I've said in many, many, many videos, I don't want to sound like a broken record and just to say the same thing every time. They always take too long. Their pressure, their actual quality of the scoring opportunities they're able to get hasn't been good. Not since, Game 3 against Ottawa. And it was the same thing tonight. All their shots, all the pressure, even if they look like they have 31 shots, which they did this game, they're all kind of just floated in from the point. Right? They're soft shots, they're floating in from the point. They're not power play. Their offense is run from their blue line. And that's not a great way to run an offense, because if you're taking a shot from the blue line, it has the most space to get blocked. Right? Also, no one's really taking big boom and slap shots now, right? So it's not hard. Players aren't afraid to get in front of them. And they're just kind of weak. But it was after that first TV timeout that Toronto started to look like the old Sceptres that we've been seeing for the past 4 games that they've lost every one of. And that really makes me wonder, if the players' intuition on how to play the game is better than they're being coached. Because there's a lot of factors to take in here other than what we're seeing. First of all, When's the last time Toronto... Let me rephrase that. What's the most goals Toronto has scored on a goalie this season in one game? They've played 11 games now. Most goals they've scored on a goalie. 3! And it was in the Ottawa game that they gave up halfway through. They scored their third goal and decided that's enough for us tonight. The one other time they did it was against New York, which was the last game they won before this losing skid. And the third goal on Osborne was the flukiest, most bizarre thing I've ever seen that would be impossible to replicate. Every single game, they have one goal. They have 2 goals. So, yeah, maybe they haven't been shut out, but they're not scoring enough to win. Unless their goalies bail them out and get a shutout, which, yeah, possible. Every game? No! Are you not leaning on them enough? You're saying you let in 1 goal? That's too much already? What? I have been shaky on Troy Ryan for his entire tenure with the Sceptres, let's be honest. I wanna evaluate some things. Season 1, Toronto got into first place in the league by getting on an 11-game win streak after a rocky start. 11, 10, 9, somewhere in there. I think it was 11. After a rocky start. And you know what that is? That's their team gelling the fastest. The league was brand new. None of the players had played with each other before, not for any great degree of time. You know, maybe a couple of them had been on a line together for sure. But not an entire roster. No. So every team was kind of trying to figure themselves out. The first half of the first season was rocky for most or all teams, and Toronto gelled the fastest. They found chemistry the fastest, and it carried them. And they got momentum, and they got confidence, and they kept rolling for 11 games. It's great. Can't replicate that. Season 2, Toronto had a bad start yet again. They were in last place for a little while. Mid-half of the season, the middle 15 games, Toronto's power play operated at like 50%. 50%! That's unheard of. That doesn't happen. Not over the span of multiple games. Certainly not. Can't replicate that. Especially not this year. Doesn't happen. And here's the thing about that. Troy Ryan, in a post-game press, I don't remember which one, but in a post-game press, he openly said, I do not touch the power play. The power play's working. Not going to touch it. And that's a good idea by him. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the rest of their game was pretty lackluster. So for the one thing that carried them through half the season was something he's openly admitted to not coaching. Not the best look, in hindsight. Troy Ryan is also the coach of Canada's national team. National women's team. Anyone remember how the rivalry series went this year? No? Did you block that out of your memory? Well, I'll tell you what, it was awful. I think Toronto scored 2 goals at the most in the series. And in one game, they let in 10. Let me make you understand. They let in 10 goals with Anne-Renee Desbiens in net, and when she got pulled, she was replaced with Emrance Mashmeyer. And 10 goals went in the net. Last season, in the playoffs, Game 3 against Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. It's the playoffs. Series was tied. Game 3, 1-1 apiece. Kristen Campbell lets in 3 goals, 3 very stoppable, very weak goals on 5 shots. And the Sceptres traded Campbell for a reason. She was very good when she was good. She was very bad when she wasn't bad. Very hot and cold goalie. Which is fine. When she's on. But as a starter, you need more consistency. No knock against her. She had a rough game, it happens. 3 goals and 5 shots. 3 very easy goals on 5 shots. You need to get her out of there. Because you know what? Toronto scored 5 goals that game. And they still lost. 7-5. Because Ryan waited until the 3rd period to put in Jackson, who was playing in their, 2nd ever PWHL game? Into the 3rd period of this game against the Sirens, Ryan shuffled the lines. I have them right here. I'll put the normal lines that the game started with on the screen at this part of the video. The shuffled lines coming into the 3rd period were Watts, Turnbull, Dalton, Spooner, Malte, Comfer centered that line, Woods, Van Weeren, Hjalmarsson, however you say it. I've heard both. And then Connors, Gentry, Zanin. So Zanin back down to the 3rd or 4th line, whatever you would consider that. Malte moved off center. Dalton up to the 1st line with Turnbull and Watts. Broke up Turnbull and Comfer, which seemed to be a pretty reliable pair. And guess what? That didn't do anything! And then after Van Weeren and Bourbonnais got the incidentals, Toronto realized, oh geez, let's try to inject some life in here. We got some physicality going. That was a lot that the refs finally called. 3rd period got very physical. Very quickly. Right after that, Turnbull was laying hits. Turnbull's not the most physical player you've ever seen, but she's the captain. She needs to set a tone for the team. She needs to inject life into that bench. She's laying hits. Fast, also part of the leadership group. She's laying hits. Trying to get something going for the team. They've only got to score 1 goal to at least make it to overtime. At least get that pity point that they love so much. And it didn't do anything. Nothing happened. Last minute, Toronto had 6 on 5. Goalie pulled, okay? Chuli's out of the net. They put their big guns on. I believe it was Turnbull, Spooner, Malte, Fast, Shelton, Comfer, I want to say. You know who they had standing out front of the net, for once, was Emma Malte. Emma Malte hunched over because that's how you play hockey. Emma Malte very eloquently has put in the past, she's 5'2". All Osborne do has to stand up slightly more than she normally would be, and that's a non-factor. And half the time, their offense doesn't even have someone out front of the net. Their offensive strategy seems to be float in a shot from the point to get a rebound and try to score on the rebound, which is hard to do when you don't have anyone standing in front of the net to clean up those dirty pucks. And it's really hard to get a rebound when Osborne can see everything because no one's in front of the net. Like, I have wavered on my faith in the coaching staff for the whole time the Sceptres been around. But, hey, Ryan's the coach of the national team. Probably knows what he's doing well enough. You know, and hey, they made the playoffs the last 2 years. They managed to, get in first. And it's like, the roads they took to get there aren't necessarily reliant on the coaching. And this game specifically, it felt, just watching it, felt so... What's the word I want to use? It felt like the players knew what they were doing more than the coaches. And the coaches told them, hey, stick to our systems. Get back on our game plan. Because do you think the Sceptres don't know they're on a 4-game losing streak going into this game? Of course they do. Do you think they don't know they're tied with the Sirens going into this game? Of course they do. They're back at home after a tough loss in Hamilton to the Torrent. Like, the players know that. The players went out, came out in the first period, hungry, feisty, aggressive, and the coaching staff shut that down, and they played in their systems, and it cost them another game. 5-game losing streak now. It's not a long season. You know, if an NHL team, for example, had the record Toronto does right now, going into their 12th game, not a big deal. First 10, 11 games, yeah, they're knocking some rust off, they're sorting their lines out, they're getting their systems in place, whatever. This is a 30-game season for the P-Dub. And they just finished game 11. They're more than a third of the way through. They don't have time to be kind of trying to figure stuff out. I said it a couple of games ago. They moved Watson Zanin. They flipped them on their lines, and it made both lines kind of mediocre. Why they did that, I do not know. Why they stuck with it, I'll understand less. The team was lifeless. The team was absolutely lifeless. And here's the other thing. If you look at the goals, some of the goals they've had in the past couple of games, some of their bigger goals, some of their better chances to get goals, they're coming off of what? It's rushes, right? Guess what rushes are? Not set plays. Rushes are pure player. Rushes, 2-on-1s, breakaways, are the players doing their own thing. There's no system for that. There's no game plan for that. There's no coaching gonna lay you out what kind of shot or dangle you need to do on a breakaway or a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2. And those have gone pretty well for them. But they set up in the offensive zone, run from way up top with nobody in front. What do you think is going to happen? I'll tell you what's not going to happen. Goals! It's so upsetting to see. Because I've thought for a little while that Troy Ryan really rides the good players he has on the ice. He's got really good, really smart, high talent, high quality players. Both on the Sceptres he's had them, and on the national team, obviously, he has them. Got eviscerated in the rivalry series. This season, they lost a bunch of their big players, and their early draft picks to expansion. They lost, I think it's 10 people. Nurse is a big one. Miller was a big one. Gosling, Daniel, Carter, big names. Jackson was great for the energy of the locker room and of the bench. Yeah, they barely played. But CJ was, they were a glue guy, vibes guy. Great for the bench. Big loss when they're not on there. And you get these newer players, right? Baskin was in the lineup tonight. Condis was scratched. So Baskin was firmly in the 6, not a 7th defender. In the 6, paired with Shelbeen. They had DeGeorge back as the 13th forward. Again, she looked fine out there. She looked pretty good, actually. She was roughing it up. She was digging her heels in a little bit. I liked to see it. I thought she played pretty well. But it seems like the insistence that the players follow the systems and they follow the plays they've set and not. Yes, obviously you have to have kind of a strategy and a formation and a system, but it's clearly not working. And the players seem to have a better idea that for the first 10 minutes of the game was working better. That got shut down. I don't love to see that. And Toronto has over a week until their next game against Boston. Against Boston, who was an absolute wagon. Yeah, they blew the takeover game somehow. I don't think anybody saw that coming. But, like, they're falling in the standings quickly. This was a game they especially needed to win with the team they're tied with to break a losing skid, to kill New York's confidence and end their winning streak. And they couldn't pull it out. I have not had more doubt in the suits of this team before now. I have a lot of faith in the players. I trust the players. There aren't a whole lot of boneheaded mistakes I'm seeing the players making. But there are a lot of systems I'm seeing that do not work at all. And if they don't change that, then they better adjust the idea of missing the playoffs quickly.